Did you know that Jesus, Yeshua is his name in Hebrew, was very, very Jewish? Oh yeah. We see pictures and art where it shows Jesus and he's not Jewish at all. He's just like this very European looking guy with straight hair, blonde, and he has like this weird glow and he, like the Renaissance era kind of thing. He looks real feminine. That's not Jesus. Jesus was a manly Jewish man from Israel. He was also Israeli. And this is an artist right here. We're going to be looking into this, but this is an artist who painted this amazing picture, this guy right here. And this picture right here shows you a very, very Jewish Jesus. And it has actually touched some Israelis' hearts who are not believers yet. But they were like, wow, look at this picture. They're showing Jesus is very Jewish. So this is the artist, Maurycy Gottlieb. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but this is the artist. He was Jewish himself, and he was living in Poland back in the 1800s. Very famous artist, and he decided to paint a picture of a very Jewish Jesus. And the painting is the Christ teaching at Capernaum, and it was painted in 1878 through 79. And you're going to see something amazing in this picture, in this painting, I think. Wait till you see this. So Jesus in the Synagogue is the title of the painting. And this is it right here. Look at this. This is a very, very Jewish Jesus with his prayer shawl on. You could see the patterns on the cloth right here. Very, very Jewish. Over here, you have a Roman who's acting like he's bored and not paying attention. But in the whole painting, you will see much more. There's some of these other people, they're Jewish. There's a rabbi here. Here's the scroll, right? The Torah, a rabbi who's contemplating what Jesus had just said. The women are back here where the women would be. Separated from where the men are, and you could see some men in the whole picture. You could see some of the men praising God, and you could see some of them, like, what is this? Why is he claiming to be the Messiah? Kind of a look on their face, which is very biblical, by the way. So here it is. It says, in addition to the Roman features, Gottlieb's painting also adds distinctly Jewish elements, including the figure of Jesus himself, from the artist expressly identifying as a practicing Jew. That's what Jesus was. He was a practicing Jewish man, but also he was God, which was a huge mystery, and I'm going to explain that to you as well. But Jesus wears, here in this painting, Jesus wears the tallit, which is a prayer shawl, around his waist as he preaches with an open Torah. The Torah are the first 5 books of the Bible written by Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's the Torah, very first books of the Bible written by Moses. So here he is. He's got an open Torah, the scroll on the synagogue's bima, right? The bima seat. Remember that? The lectern. And his sacred status is indicated by a halo's golden glow right there. So he's proclaiming him to be Messiah as well, not just Jesus, not just a Jewish Jesus, but also Messiah. Gottlieb's scene of Christ's teaching addresses the dominant Catholic audience in his native Poland. Remember, the Catholic doctrine is that the church has replaced Israel. So it's replacement theology, which is not in the Bible. It's wrong, because you have to read Romans chapter 11 and understand that God still has a great plan to save Israel, just like Joseph saved Israel, right? And Moses, while they had Gentile brides. So as he declared in a letter to a friend from a trip to Rome in 1878, he wished for nothing more than harmony of his own Jewish people with their Catholic neighbors. Wow. Harmony was what he was after with this painting. Amazing stuff. I love art, don't you? So how deeply, he said, how deeply I wish to eradicate all prejudices against my people. How avidly I desire to uproot the hatred developing the oppressed and the tormented nation, and to bring peace between the Poles and the Jews. For the history of both people is a chronicle of grief and anguish. Wow. So this is why he painted this powerful, powerful painting. In the painting, the congregation, except for the lone and seemingly bored Roman over here, right? We talked about that, is clearly Jewish. Many listeners wear prayer shawls, the tallit, right? And some pulled over their brows. So you could see many people in this painting wearing the shawls. Their reactions are various, mostly serious, but with varying degrees of intensity, ranging from the figure with the hands uplifted in prayer to the moody in introspection of his neighbor below the lamp who covers his face in withdrawal and meditation. So you can see right here, this guy's in withdrawal and meditation. And then over here, you could see him with his hands in praise. Here's his head. Here's his hands in praise toward Jesus. Isn't that amazing? And then here in the painting, the congregation, except for the lone and seemingly bored Roman, is clearly Jewish. Many listeners wearing prayer shawls, some pulled over their brows. I think we talked about that one already, and we saw that. So here is another portion of the painting, and you could see what looks like a rabbi here holding a scroll, and some people in anguish. Now, this is a different painting, actually, and this is one from his synagogue, and this is the artist himself. And he's put himself in this picture. Interestingly, he's wearing a robe kind of like what Joseph would wear. Did you notice that? The robe of many different colors. And then here you could see the rabbi holding on to the Torah and the synagogue where he worshiped. This is the artist again, very Jewish. And we know this in Matthew 22. It says, but when the Pharisees heard that he silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Now, the Jewish people are going to relate with what Jesus answers here big time, because it's what they believe. And it's right out of Deuteronomy. This is where Jesus quotes from. And this has touched many Jewish people's hearts today. Let's get into it. So here it is. So he says this, Jesus, and he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then Jesus said, on these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So like all the law and the prophets hinge and they hang upon these two commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. This is what Jesus said. And they were astonished at his answer, and they could not argue with him. And the Jewish people today cannot argue with that. In fact, they love that. When they read that, it's like their eyes are open. Like, whoa, this is Jesus? I thought Jesus was a Catholic. Or I thought Jesus was a Roman. Or I thought Jesus was against the Jewish people. No, he was very Jewish. And that painting showed a beautiful picture of that. And I thought it was amazing. I wanted to share this with you guys. Hey, by the way, I wrote a book, See Jesus in the Old Testament, all the places where you could find him. And there's 320 pages of all of those places, in Joseph's story, in the prophets, and in the Psalms, and I think it'll bless your heart. Because we know that in Luke chapter 24, right? In Luke 24, this is what Jesus said. He said, these things were all written about me in the law of Moses, in the prophets, and the Psalms, and they must be fulfilled. Jesus said that. And that's the order of the Tanakh, right? The Torah, the TA stands for the Torah, the law of Moses, and then the prophets and the Psalms. So Jesus spelled it all out for us, you guys. It's just amazing. Here it is. It's the Tanakh, right? The Torah, law of Moses, the TA, right? The Nevi'im, the prophets, and then the Ketuvim, which are the writings like the Psalms. This is what Jesus did. So, hey, you could check this book out if you wish. You could also watch this playlist, See Jesus in the Old Testament. I think you'll be blessed by it. Hey, I love you, my friends. Remember this, Yeshua wins in the end. Jesus wins in the end. I love you, my friend. God bless you.